Research is very clear that you lose 2% of your urinary sphincter muscle strength every year after the age of 35. And when you are urinating, do not push your pee out. When you're pushing your pee out, you're actually tensing your muscles, and then you're straining all your pelvic floor muscles and ligaments, which will lead to weakness over time. So sit, chill, breathe, don't push.
Thank you for choosing this Well Chat. To support future episodes, consider purchasing a Freedom Art Mat or a vegan leather journal at freedomatthemat.com. We're a nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of women globally through wellness education and appreciate your support. Now, on to the conversation. Hi, everybody. It's Olivia with Freedom at the Mat, and today you're in for another episode of Well Chat. You know, here we champion holistic wellness tailored for Black women on and off the mat, and today I am giddy. I am thrilled that we can welcome to Freedom at the Mat's Well Chat the one and only Vagina Whisperer, right? Vagina, we're going to say it together. Vagina Whisperer, Dr. Sara Reardon. She has authored a phenomenal new book, which I highly recommend that everybody read. We're going to talk about some of the key points or some of the points that she elevates in the book, and it is a game changer for everyone. She goes through so much about pelvic floor health that I didn't know about. She's helping us break taboos and restores confidence through practical body positive strategies. As Dr. Sara says in her book, pelvic floor care is not just wellness. It's not just something we can do if we want to. It is critical health care and critical to our everyday functioning. So today, Dr. Sara is with us to really talk through pelvic floor care and health. Dr. Sara, how are you today?
Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled that you've made time. I know you have a very busy practice, and we're grateful for your time today. So I want to get right into it, okay? So you talked in your book, in Floored, right, which will show an image of it for everybody, which just came out. When did it come out?
2025, in the summer of 2025.
Okay. So in Floored, you talked about pelvic floor health being true health care, not just something we can do if we want to. And I don't think that I'd ever thought about my pelvic floor in such a way that way. I don't think I really thought about it at all, quite honestly. We know about the push-ups, which we'll talk about in a little bit, right? The Kegels, but I really hadn't thought beyond that around pelvic floor health. So can you tell us just from the very beginning, how does pelvic floor health affect our everyday lives?
I think it's helpful to start with what the pelvic floor is and what it does, and then we can kind of understand how important it is to day-to-day function, particularly for women.
Okay.
So your pelvic floor is a basket of muscles that sit at the bottom of your pelvis. So your pelvis is that ring of bones that looks like a basin that, you know, we all see in skeleton models. And at the bottom of that, we often see an opening in the skeleton models, but in our bodies, there's a basket of muscles that sit like a hammock, and those muscles attach from the pubic bone to the tailbone and side to side, and those muscles support our pelvic organs. So in the female body, your uterus, your ovaries, your bladder, which holds urine, your bowels, which hold stool, all rest inside of that basket. And then that group of muscles also has openings. So it has 3 openings, one for the urethra, which, you know, is where urine exits the body, one for the anal opening for bowel movement, and then the vagina for vaginal birth, vaginal intercourse, and menstruation. So these muscles support us. They help us hold in pee and poop. They help us deliver babies and have sex and have periods, but they also offer core support. So when we cough, sneeze, lift, exercise, stand up from a chair, we need those muscles to be turning on and working well for us. Often what happens is that we don't even know the pelvic floor exists until we start experiencing a problem.
Right.
Common issues could be urinary leakage, painful intercourse, prolapse, constipation and hemorrhoids. And, you know, these things all kind of vary at different seasons of a woman's life, which is why it's so important that we have these conversations so we know what to look out for. And then we also know that there are treatment options available.
Got it. So what's the function of it every day that impacts, you know, if I have poor pelvic floor health, Dr. Sara, how will I know it other than urinary leakage? I think that's the first go-to that we have. But
Yeah.
how else does it show up for us?
So I would say urinary leakage is obviously the most common, but even other bladder issues like a hard time starting your urine stream, feeling like you're not emptying completely, going to the bathroom frequently, like more than every 2 hours, or waking at nighttime often to pee, or even recurring urinary tract infections. When it comes to pooping problems, it could be straining with bowel movements, sensation of incomplete emptying, fecal staining or fecal leakage, hemorrhoids, fissures, painful bowel movements. Sexual health, decreased sensation with intercourse. This can happen with aging or, after giving birth. Painful sex. We may think, oh, it's painful, after giving birth or painful with aging, but no pain is ever normal. It's information from our bodies that something's not working well. Also changes in orgasm. So weaker orgasms, leakage with orgasms, the inability to have orgasms. And then from a support perspective, it could be diastasis recti, which is kind of when your abdominal wall starts to separate in the middle. It's really common during pregnancy and postpartum. Prolapse, which is when that hammock isn't supporting your pelvic organs and it feels like you have pressure in your vagina or something's falling out. But even things like back pain or deep hip pain, or the things that we think are just like, oh, a little back pain is normal. It's a weak core, but your pelvic floor is part of your core muscles. So those are influenced all throughout the day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, I do want to go back to the urine leakage because that is the one that's most common. In your book, I was greatly delighted, not around the fact that the cheerleader was having urine leakage, but you debunked a myth, right? That urine leakage only happens when you get older. I think most of us, we see Depends commercials and all those, and we think that you're only going to experience urine leakage as you get older. But you shared in the book, and I'd like for you to share with the audience today, what are some other reasons that people may experience urine leakage? And for those, I didn't go through the whole story, but in the book, Dr. Sara shares an example of a cheerleader who's a young university student, right? And she's coming and she's having urinary leakage and she's embarrassed about it because she has a cheerleading uniform on. So this was Dr. Sara's lead in to the fact that there are several other reasons for just age.
Right. And I think that that's such an important myth because someone can think like, I don't have a pelvic floor problem because I've never had babies, or I don't have a pelvic floor problem because I'm not in menopause yet, where our pelvic floor is changing through every season of life. It's even changing every month because we have menstrual cycles every month. So from the time you are a young woman hitting puberty, your pelvic floor is changing in every season. So you can have urinary leakage from high impact exercise, and that could be from cheerleading, tennis, basketball, long distance runners, cheer, volleyball players, anything where you think about repetitive kind of consistent pressure down, like jumping, running, impact, even heavy weightlifters. Your pelvic floor, again, supports everything inside your abdominal cavity. So if those muscles get strained and get weaker over time, and with these repetitive experiences, you'll experience bladder leakage. I think what's missing is that we're telling people to train their cores, train their quads, train their biceps, but not train their pelvic floor.
Agreed. I've never, ever heard of this prior to you and Floored, which is why I wanted to have this episode. I'm like, I work out quite a bit. And one of my questions for you, if you don't mind, a quick counsel is,
of course,
all the time. I've been cycling for years. Is that bad for me? Should I stop, or should I just counteract that activity with strengthening exercises?
It's all about balance. So I think that cycling is great. There is a condition called cyclist syndrome that can affect your pelvic floor, where there's nerves that kind of go between your sit bones. And when those get really consistently compressed, it can cause like clitoral pain, vaginal pain, pain with sitting, burning with urination, burning with bowel movements, pain with sex. So if you don't have those issues, then cycle away. But what I think is important about balance is that if you're cycling all the time, what can you do to soften or relax those muscles or tissues after you've been squeezing and tightening and on a saddle for so long? So maybe doing a little bit of stretching and some yoga poses like child's pose, happy baby, a deep squat. Often we have tight hamstrings and weak glutes when we cycle. So doing some glute exercises to kind of strengthen the pelvic girdle. So it's all about balance. In the same way, if you're a heavy weightlifter and all you do is tighten, and you're walking around with a pulled up pelvic floor and sucked in stomach, your muscles need to relax. And so that balance will look like for you some of those same things versus somebody who only does yoga and they may need to do more strengthening. So it's a little bit of just balance. Not everybody who cycles is going to have a problem. Not everybody who weightlifts will have a problem. There's so many variables with posture and mechanics and even genetics and even birth history. But I think it's all about balance and what can you do proactively to minimize the risk of these things happening.
Dr. Sara, are there resources out there that those of us who do work out, those of us who do cycle or weightlift, that we can consult? Because I know that you're a pelvic health physical therapist. We can consult to help us figure out mechanically, because now you got me thinking, I have to spin tomorrow morning. I'm spinning tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And I spin all the time. I've been spinning for years. And when I saw this in your book, I was like, what? So I appreciate you sharing that it's just about balance. But, as we stay with your expertise, I just want to know, are there some resources for mechanics we can offer to our people?
Yeah. I mean, I would even go on my website, thevaginawhisperer.com, and we have hundreds of blog posts. And we're really saying, like, everything that you are asking, other people have asked before. And so we write a lot of blog posts and create a lot of content to answer these questions that people are searching for. So we have one on like posture during, I say the Peloton because that's what I have, but posture during Peloton riding, and like, what are your options for a saddle? Like, how do you need to adjust the seat during pregnancy? If you start having symptoms, pelvic floor symptoms, what should you look out for? Excellent. What are some stretches to do for afterwards? So these are all things that, we're not proactively given, but I'm such a fan of educating women to not only overcome these problems, but how do we prevent them, right? Like we're teaching people tons of things to help prevent diabetes or osteoporosis. Like, what can we do to help women also prevent pelvic floor issues that we are more vulnerable to?
Thank you for dedicating your life and your mission to this. We appreciate it.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, it's helped me. I have a vagina and I have a pelvic floor. So what I think is like, why am I the lucky one who picked this field and got all of this training when I'm like, every woman deserves this education? Why is it not being proactively given to them? So that's why I'm so passionate talking about it.
Well, and you're normalizing talking about being a vagina owner, as you called it. For all vagina owners, this information is really, really valuable. So I want to talk to you about sleep. In your book, you share that even when we sleep, there are things that we can do to improve our pelvic health. Will you share some of that?
Well, the first thing is we need to get it. I think that so many of us don't get enough. It's really a time of rest and rejuvenation for our bodies, for our muscles, for our tissues, and our nervous system. When you have a very upregulated nervous system, which I can tend to have, we have more tension oftentimes. When we have more tension in our bodies, we have more tension in our pelvic floor. So I think maximizing sleep for rest, recovery, and health is important.
Okay.
The other thing is, if you're waking at night to pee, what's normal to wake at night is 0 to 2 times. So if you're waking more than 2 times at night to pee, it's disrupting your sleep and it's considered a pelvic floor problem. So I tell folks to kind of cut their fluids off 2 hours before they go to sleep, get enough fluids like in the first half of the day.
Right.
Go to the bathroom before you go to sleep 1 time, sit down, take some big deep breaths, don't push when you pee, and just kind of let everything flow. And then, going into that sleep with optimal kind of bladder health, making sure that you also avoid like alcohol, caffeinated drinks, carbonated drinks, things that are bladder irritants right before bed as well. And then lastly, sleeping in a position that's comfortable, but that also might optimize pelvic floor positioning. So I like to sleep with a pillow between my knees so I don't have one hip kind of rotated in. If I'm on my back, I put a pillow underneath my knees so that I'm not like arching my back and my back is supported and relaxed. So kind of just different playing around pillow placement to make sure that you are, getting the most comfortable sleep possible and not having to wake frequently to urinate.
Thank you so much. I thought that was fascinating when I read that about, okay, I do sleep on my side, right? To make sure you don't have a hip hiked up over the other. So thank you. Or if you're on your stomach, like you have a knee that's right up by your shoulder, like don't do that.
Yeah.
Really valuable. Okay, Dr. Sara, let's talk about exercise. So in your book, you created a term, or you had a friend who created a term called puss-ups, right? Or puss-ups, which is also known as the Kegel, which you helped us understand was actually fascinating because it is a woman's exercise for a woman's body, but created by a man.
Yeah. Named by a male gynecologist.
Yes.
After himself.
Yes. So and on IG, I've seen you demonstrate dead bugs, fire hydrants, standing leg march movements. I want you to help us understand what we should do through exercise to improve our pelvic floor health. But also when you're doing like the standing march and you're doing the dead bugs, what mechanically are you doing to actually improve the pelvic floor health?
Yeah. So this is a core muscle, just like you were taught to kind of draw in your deep abdominal wall before you do a crunch or before you do a leg lift. Like you're really kind of setting your core in a very kind of solid embraced maneuver. Oftentimes we have core weakness, right? We have weak abs, we have weak pelvic floors, and they're not turning on quickly before movement like we need them to. So one of the ways you can start activating is that pre-contraction of your pelvic floor before movement, before you initiate a movement. So a pelvic floor contraction is the same thing as a Kegel contraction, is also the same thing as the nickname we give them puss-ups, which I think is hilarious. But it's like the maneuver is this basket of muscles, you're kind of squeezing and lifting that basket of muscles up. It's as if you're urinating and you stop your urine stream, that's a Kegel contraction. If you are about to pass gas in an elevator and you're trying to hold it in, that's a Kegel contraction. I don't want you doing Kegels while you're peeing, but it's that maneuver, that kind of closing. It's not a squeezing and curling your toes and clenching everything. It's a gentle squeeze and lift. And when you do that, you're kind of turning on your deep core, you're turning on your pelvic floor, and then you're doing a maneuver, a leg lift, a march, a dead bug. The goal is to train these muscles in different positions. Most of us are like, yeah, I do Kegels when I'm sitting in the car, but I'm like, but that's not when you're leaking. Right? You're leaking when you're playing tennis. You're leaking when you're laughing with your girlfriend. You're leaking when you're jumping in the bounce house. So you have to train these muscles to perform during the different functions you want to do during the day, whether it's cheerleading or running or sneezing or lifting a heavy box.
So you said there's a certain way to do the Kegel, that many of us are doing the Kegel incorrectly.
Yeah.
Do you want to correct once and for all how we're supposed to do the Kegel?
So the cue that I often give people is to think about sipping up a thick smoothie with your vagina. So it's kind of squeeze and lift. So sit up tall. If you're sitting and listening to this, kind of take a big, deep cleansing breath. Make sure that you're not holding in tension. And then I want you to think about sipping up a thick smoothie with your vagina. And you'll feel like a little closing there. You're not tightening your butt. You're not sucking in your abs. It's just a little closing of the vagina, and then let it go. The relaxation is just as important as the contraction. So that's the Kegel contraction or the pelvic floor contraction. It's not pushing out, bearing down, holding it tight for 20 minutes, clenching your jaw, sucking in your stomach. It's none of those things. It's a very subtle engagement. Once you get the hang of that contraction with exercise and lifting weights and all those things, you don't have to kind of consciously think about it. It will start turning on by itself. So it's getting stronger. But for many people who are having problems, or you're postmenopausal, or you're postpartum, or you're leaking, you may have to kind of thoughtfully engage those muscles during exercise, engage and relax, and then eventually it'll become automatic for you.
Very well. Now, you also mentioned, and I'm going to try to remember that and practice that, because I felt the sensation. I felt what you were saying, but I also felt that I was squeezing my butt too. So I'll have to practice this, but not doing that at the same time. You mentioned that there is a certain way to pee, right way to pee. What is the right way to pee?
Not pushing. As women, as mothers, as working folks, we are always trying to be efficient and we are always in a hurry.
Yes.
And that same thing is true when we are peeing. When you are urinating, your bladder, which is a muscle, is filled with urine, and your pelvic floor muscles are closed and tight and holding all of that urine in. When you go to urinate, you should be sitting down, not hovering over the toilet. So, and then lean forward. And then
even in the public bathrooms?
Even in the public. Exceptions are like a porta potty during Mardi Gras, a French Quarter back of the dark bar situation. Like if you're in New Orleans, you're like, I'm not peeing there, Sarah. And I'm like, I got you. I totally get it.
Right.
I'll teach you how to pee, like hover pee, but most of the time, like if you're in a Target, if you're in the airport, like sit, because that helps your muscles relax better. So you sit down, lean forward, and then you just breathe. You do not push your pee out. When you're pushing your pee out, you're actually tensing your muscles, making it harder to empty. And then you're straining all your pelvic floor muscles and ligaments, which will lead to weakness over time. So sit, chill, breathe. Don't push, and then kind of wiggle your hips, wipe. And if you feel like you aren't completely empty, sit down again. Do what's called double voiding, sit, chill, breathe, pee if you need to, and then wipe and walk away. So just don't push.
Gotcha. Thank you. the Squatty Potty, which I'm a big fan of the ad campaign for the Squatty Potty. Should we be doing the Squatty Potty? Should we like have the little thing that goes in it?
Yeah.
Does that help
So
our pelvic floor health?
a squatty potty is a pooping stool. So it's a stool that goes underneath your feet when you're having bowel movement. So there's different brands. You can use your kid's step stool. If you've got a small child, you can use yoga blocks. You can use your Amazon box. You can use a pooping stool that you can get online. But what you do is you use that for bowel movements. When you have a bowel movement, automatically put your feet on it. And what that does is it brings your knees higher than your hips and puts you in a squatting position when you're sitting on the toilet. Squatting is the best position to relax your pelvic floor for a bowel movement. So yes, we should all be using them for pooping. Even my kid's bathroom has one.
Okay.
Proactively use it. Don't wait until you're straining and then you're like, oh, I don't know if I got it all out. Let me put it up now. No, you just automatically put your feet on it. With pooping, you can push. Peeing, don't push. Pooping, you can push. I just say don't hold your breath. So you're going to pushing and bearing down. Your feet are on the stool. And then, empty the tank. And it's just way more effective and will minimize straining. And again, straining weakens your pelvic floor.
Got you. Thank you so very much. Thank you for that, for once and for all.
Who knew?
So,
peeing and pooping is the right way.
right. I'm like, who knew? As in, I've never thought about these things. So many women face barriers to pelvic floor therapy due to access, cost, time, and stigma, right? Other than buying and reading Floored, which I do recommend that everybody do, and following you on social media, right? The Vagina Whisperer for tips, which she offers incredible, very accessible things we can all do, exercises and all of that. What are 3 things that your everyday woman who is experiencing issues right now with leakage or any other pelvic floor strength issues that she can do today to really improve her pelvic floor strength?
So I'll add the first thing, which is kind of an extension of the work I've already done, is I created an app called the V Hive, the V-Hive.
Okay.
Any fans of Beyonce will get that. And so, but it's at-home exercises and training for your pelvic floor because not everyone is able to go in to see a therapist or can afford that or can get time off for that. So it's at-home training where you can answer a quiz that asks you, do you have leakage? Do you have pain? Kind of, do you want to be preventative? And are you in perimenopause? And then you can kind of get an exercise program tailored to your needs. So it's free for a week when you download it so everybody can try it out. I like a buy before you try. So you can just find it on my website, thevaginawhisperer.com, and you'll get access to that. Check it out for free. And then hopefully you'll love it. I think that the other thing is start being thoughtful about the experiences that you're having. If you're like, oh, I do feel like sex has gotten like drier and more uncomfortable now, like after I turned 40, or, I do kind of started to have like a little leak when I sneeze and that didn't used to happen, or I am pushing when I pee. Like I need to think of Sara when I'm peeing and I need to stop doing that. Like start paying attention to what's happening because the sooner you start addressing these issues, the better. Research is very clear that you lose 2% of your urinary sphincter muscle strength every year after the age of 35. Every year. So this is just like you lose bone density, you lose muscle mass, like you lose pelvic floor muscle strength. So these issues don't get better on their own. And we need to start addressing them sooner. I think that the other thing is that be proactive about this. You don't have to wait for a problem to start training. Like don't wait for back pain to have a strong core. Don't wait to get diabetes to start looking at your sugar, right?
Right.
Start being proactive. Like I'm 43, I'm in perimenopause. I'm also postpartum. So there's this like flashing yellow light of like, hey, this is what's coming down the runway. 100% of women are going to go through perimenopause and menopause. And then we have an entire second half of our life where we need our pelvic floor to be functioning, where we can travel, we can have sex, we can raise kids and grandkids, we can work, we can exercise. But if your pelvic floor isn't functioning for you, you're not going to be able to do those things comfortably or confidently. So be proactive, whether it's the resources we've talked about, whether it's going in to see a pelvic floor therapist. I just think that we need to not be doing damage control in women's health our entire lives, not waiting for shit to hit the fan to start being like, oh, we should think about how we can take care of that. I think we deserve this information and this training. And there's so much that we can do to optimize our pelvic floor health so we can have the lives we deserve.
And so that leads me to my last question for you, last couple of questions. When should someone absolutely make a V line, hope you like that, for you, right? I get it in terms of most of us aren't thinking about it. It seems like an extra thing to have. But for some people, it may become dire. They need to find a pelvic floor physical therapist?
Yeah. I think certain seasons of life, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, or after a surgery, abdominal surgery or prolapse surgery, hysterectomy, those are all pretty huge physical transformations for women where their
Yep.
pelvic floor is affected. So if you have experienced those or are experiencing those, I would say go. If you're having symptoms, any of the symptoms that we talked about, but sometimes it's like, oh, I just can't make it right now to therapy, or I don't know, Sarah, I don't have the resources or time to do your workout. When these issues start affecting your quality of life, when you're like, you know what, I don't really want to go see the movie with my husband because I don't want to sit in the theater for 2 hours because I don't trust that I can like make it to the bathroom in time, or I'm picking an aisle seat on the plane because I can't be by the window because I'm not sure I'm going to get to the bathroom. I don't want to socialize because I'm wearing a pad and I'm worried it might smell. And so I'm starting to kind of socially isolate. You know what? I'm just going to not do jumping jacks when I work out. And instead I'll just do squats because I'm worried I'm going to leak. So when you start changing your behaviors because of these symptoms,
Yep.
that's when it's like it's affecting your quality of life.
Okay. And do we just Google pelvic floor physical therapist?
So there's a couple things. So you can go to the vaginawhisperer.com. Again, there's like my app. I have tons of resources. You can follow me on social media. If you're in New Orleans, which is where I'm located, the clinic where I work is called NOLA Pelvic Health, and we have an amazing team of therapists. But you can talk to your doctor and say, hey, is there a pelvic floor physical therapist that you'd recommend? You can talk to your girlfriends and your friends because oftentimes they're the best referral is word of mouth. And then you can absolutely Google pelvic floor therapist near me, and you'll be surprised at who pops up, that you actually do have resources in your area. And I would call them, make sure it feels like a good fit for you. It is an intimate type of therapy, so you have to feel comfortable. You have to feel like you may want to work with a therapist who is your race, your background, your religion, who kind of gets it in a way that maybe others won't. And that is hopefully available kind of in your area. But I think that ultimately, if the provider's not the right one for you, I want you to find another provider and other resources. I always say, like, if you're like, I've been to pelvic floor therapy and, it didn't work. I'm like, it's like saying I tried on pants and they didn't fit. So I just like stopped wearing pants. Like, find the right one for you because everyone is not the right fit for everybody.
Very well said. Dr. Sara, you are the foremost vagina whisperer. Who knew there could be such a thing? I need you to tell me, in your own words, what does this mean to you to have this mission in your life, to be the vagina whisperer for all the vagina owners in the world?
I mean, it is a very clear mission that I have to help improve the way that our healthcare system takes care of women, and not just this generation, but for generations to follow, that we should not suffer or hide or feel embarrassed about things that are happening in our bodies, that we are aware of the resources that are available to us, that we are not gaslit in the medical system when we bring them up, and that we're not ashamed to have these conversations. I always say we need to normalize the conversations, not normalize the problems. So that is ultimately what I want. And that's what having conversations like this with you, that helps achieve it. And I also feel really lucky. Like, this is fun for me. My dinner table conversations are a hoot, and I've met so many amazing people, and my patients teach me more than I teach them. But it's just been an incredible journey. I've had incredible opportunities, and I just hope that we can keep moving the needle.
We appreciate you because your normalization of even just using the word vagina is going to free so many people. Freedom at the Mat, our whole point is to free people to live freer lives. And just, you are empowering so many women. What do you want every vagina owner to know?
That there's ways you can take care of your vagina. There's ways you can prevent issues. There's ways you can overcome them. And that these are things not to be embarrassed about. I think society, by not talking about these things, we feel like we shouldn't talk about them. But it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I've worked with tens of thousands of women, all of them for coming in for something that they thought nobody else experienced. And so, but that's not the case. There's an entire book written about all of the things that women experience that